Hi everyone, welcome back to Chemical Engineering Statistics. Today we will discuss about statistical design experiments. We will divide this topic into three modules. The first one is the fundamental principle of experiments. The second one is the one factorial fully randomized experiments and ANOVA concept. The third one is the one factorial RCBD experiments and block concept. If we look back to our first meeting, we know that conducting experiments is one of the main work of chemical engineer. In conducting experiment, there are few terminology that we need to know. First is the experiment factors. The experiment factors is the variables which response or which effect to the response need to be observed through experiment. So this is our factors of interest. This is one factor or this is the factors whose value are varied throughout the experiment. The second one is the nuisance factor. Nuisance factor are the variables that affect the response and can be controlled but will not discuss further. The third one is the noise factor. The noise factor is the variable that affect randomly on response and cannot be controlled. The noise factor often resulted in the error of the experiments. Those factors will affect the system and results in varied response. So the response is the result value of experiment that shows how our system works. There are four main general objectives in conducting experiments. The first one is the variable screening method. So when we do experiment, we often have several experimental factors of interest. However, in many cases, not all of those variables or not all of those factors significantly affect the response. So by doing the experiment, we can screen which variable actually affected our response significantly. The second objective is to build the model, or in other words, to build the mathematical relation between factors and response of our experiment. The third one, we can do optimization. So when we do experiment, we can define the combination of experimental factors that could result on the highest or lowest response. The fourth objective is to measure factors' robustness of the change on experiment factors. When you do your own experiment in the fourth grade, you will construct your experiment based on at least one of these objectives. There are several approaches that can be conducted in doing experiment. The first one is the one factor at a time. So when we do experiment and then we have several experimental factors of interest. For example, we have a temperature and pressure as the experimental factor. If we do one factor at a time experiment, we will choose values for temperature and values for pressure, and then we do all possible combination of those temperature and pressure values. So that's one factor at a time. We will have a very complete response, but this approach is very time consuming, not to say it's only money and material consuming as well. The second approach is the best guess. So just like the name, best guess, we just guess how to combine the experimental factor. This method is not that accurate actually. And the third one is the design of statistical experiment. So in the design of statistical experiment, we adjust the experiment variables for every trial. These adjustments are arranged based on the statistical fundamental knowledge. The results of this experiment can also be processed using statistical method. So by conducting the design of statistical experiment, we can save time, money, and materials, but also have a valid response, a good enough response to be processed using the statistical method and to draw a strong and a good conclusion. There are several terminology that we need to know in conducting the statistical experiment. The first one is the randomization. So randomization means that we conduct the experiments in random order. So this means that we don't have any particular or any preferences in the uh, order of the experiments. Replication. Replication means complete repetition on runs. So repeat we really repeat our each of our experiment, not only do the partial repetition or just do like maybe duplicate the characterization. So we need to do total complete repetition on all of our experiment. The third one is the blocking. So blocking is the separation of runs into few groups according to the execution identity. We will look further on this terminology and to how to do good statistical experiment later in the next video. Thank you and see you in the next video.